The protagonist, at night, arrives at a posh mansion. Susan wanders around the house, imagining a cold and melancholy Los Angeles. When the heroine drives home, another car stops near her gate. In the morning, Susan learns that a package addressed to her was left near the house. The heroine decides to let all the employees go for the weekend, as she and her husband plan to go to the sea. While trying to open the package, Susan hurts her finger and asks Christopher to help her. The heroine learns that her ex-husband Edward left her this manuscript, which will be published in the spring. In the letter, the man offers to meet in the next 3 days. Susan decides to tell her new husband about it. However, inattentive Hutton does not remember that Edward was a writer and was creating a novel when he and the heroine met. Susan asks why the man did not come to her exhibition at the gallery, although he knew it was important. The heroine tries to mend the relationship and suggests going to the sea. However, Hutton says that he needs to fly to New York, although he returned from there only yesterday. Susan is going to organize a party for her friends and sarcastically promises that she will hang pictures of young artists on the walls so that no one will guess that their business is going badly. However, it turns out that one of her friends is already aware of the financial difficulties. In addition, Sylvia asks Susan to see a doctor, since last time she scared her a lot. The friend thinks that the heroine is too hard on herself. Susan walks away from the conversation to see her husband off on a trip. At dinner, the heroine has a conversation with Sylvia's husband. Carlos admires the opening of the new exhibition, finding the work strong and contrasting. However, the heroine is not happy about it. This work has become a chore for her. Carlos advises her to enjoy the absurdity of existence. When the guests leave, the heroine takes a pill, puts on glasses, and decides to start reading Edward's book. In the novel, Tony Hastings goes on a journey with his wife Laura and daughter India. At night, a man drives a car through West Texas, where there is no communication. Even the radio refuses to work in this wilderness. As India falls asleep, Tony strokes Laura's shoulder. The sleepy woman smiles amiably in response. 2 cars traveling side by side appear on the road. Tony tries to overtake them and honks his horn. The angry girl gives the driver the middle finger. This pisses him off. Laura gets nervous and asks her husband to drive faster. The car starts to swerve in front of Tony, causing him to accidentally hit her. The angry driver starts catching up with Laura's family again. India gets very nervous when a second car rams their car and demands them to stop. The pursuers manage to push Tony to the side of the road. Reading this, Susan has strong emotions and tries to come to her senses. A guy named Ray gets out of the car and approaches Tony. Laura gets very nervous when India blames the guys for the accident. Tony apologizes for his daughter and for what happened on the road. Ray acts strangely, scares the women, but then still allows the family to leave. Tony starts the car and realizes that it is broken down. Ray offers to fix their car, and then together they drive to the nearest town to formalize the accident according to all the rules. The man asks Tony to get out of the car to get the spare tire. Ray then offers to take Laura and her daughter out to make it easier to lift the car. The man begins to fight with Tony over the fact that the women did not want to get out. When a police car drives by, Laura and India try to stop it. Ray talks to the man again and attacks him. India, who has learned nothing from her finger pointing that caused the incident, insults Ray again. Bess and Lou attack the women, but they manage to escape. Laura and her daughter decide to hide in their car. Ray and Bess jump into it and kidnap them. Tony tries to stop them, but is held back by Lou. Susan slams the book shut and calls Hutton. The heroine is surprised that he hasn't rented a room on their favorite floor, and then guesses from the elevator operator that her husband has rented a room for himself and another woman. Susan returns to the affair. Lou puts Tony in the car and demands they go wherever he tells them to go. Guy reassures Laura's husband, saying that nothing has happened to his women yet. Lou orders them to turn onto a country road. Near an abandoned building, Tony spots his car. The road comes to an abrupt end. Lou throws the man out of the car and then drives away. After a while, Tony notices the headlights and hides between the rocks. Ray and Bess look for him, but hearing no answer, they get angry and drive away. Already at dawn, Tony reaches the highway. He manages to make a phone call and gets to the police. The officers promise to keep him informed of the investigation. Tony, like Susan, sinks into an agonizing wait. A man stays in a hotel and tries to wait for news about his wife and daughter. Suddenly, a phone call rings. Tony learns that his car has been found in a dried-up creek. There is still no news of Laura and India, so the police turn the case over to Lieutenant Andes. He picks up Tony and sets up an interrogation on the way. Andes wonders why the man didn't come out when he was called. The lieutenant drives to the house where the man called from. From there, Tony tries to remember the return route. A man notices the very same place, and together with the policeman and Andes sets off. Susan is completely immersed in the book, wanting to know what will happen next. The heroine shudders when she reaches the next page. Andes manages to find the man's wife and daughter. Unclothed, they are lying on a red couch, embracing each other. Tony realizes they are without signs of life. Susan is in great pain from what she has read and calls her daughter on the phone. The heroine recalls how she once met Edward. When she learns that he has no acquaintances in New York, Susan invites him to dinner. The heroine reminisces about Texas, where they grew up together. Over dinner, Edward notices that Susan has the same sad eyes as her mother. The heroine tells him that she has been trying to be perfect since she was a child, but feels that she doesn't live up to it. Edward believes that Susan underestimates herself, especially as an artist. The heroine invites the guy to her house. They both confess that they were each other's first love. In the present, Susan tries to come to her senses and returns to the book. Tony learns that his wife and daughter were abused before being destroyed. Laura was hit with a bat and India was strangled. Andes reveals that they found the van that Ray and his friends were living in. They need to fingerprint and run the suspects through the database. Susan takes a break from the book and remembers talking to her mother about Edward and her desire to marry him, and persistently discouraged her from marrying him, saying that they were different people and that Edward was too weak and soft. The woman says that in a couple of years Susan will hate him for what she used to love him for. In the present, the heroine sends Edward a text message asking him to meet. Tony receives a picture of a suspect, Steve, nicknamed Bess. At night he has a nightmare about India. Upon waking up, the man calls Andes and tells him he recognizes the culprit. The lieutenant warns that such a case can drag on for years, and you need to be prepared for that. In the shower, Susan recalls Edward's passion for writing. A short time later, Tony arrives at the station. Andes reveals that Bess was eliminated in an attempted robbery. The lieutenant offers to identify another guy. Tony realizes that Lou is in front of him. However, the guy lies that they are seeing each other for the first time. At work, Susan talks to her assistant about her first marriage. The heroine says that she was married to Edward for only 2 years, did not believe in him as a writer, and then left him for Hutton, committing something unforgivable. Back home, the heroine has a drink and sits down to read a book again. Andes manages to find Ray and convinces him to go with him to the police station. Tony stops the car and tells the guy what he and his friends did to his family. Ray desperately resists and says he didn't do anything like that. Andes takes him into the house where everything took place. Tony loses his temper and demands that Ray tell him in detail what has become of his wife and daughter. In a fit of rage, the man punches the perpetrator. Susan gets distracted from the book and remembers how she didn't believe in Edward and criticized him. In addition, the heroine reenacts the moment when she first saw Hutton at the lecture. The heroine continues reading. Soon Andes calls Tony and tells him that their prime suspect is being released. The lieutenant offers to meet and tells her that he has a lung problem that is causing him to be retired. Andes asks how badly Tony wants revenge on Lou and Ray. The man says he's willing to go outside the law to do so. Susan recalls how she broke up with Edward because of her hunger for stability. The heroine wanted to be the way Edward saw her, but she realized that this was not the truth. Susan tried to explain that she was deeply unhappy and then ran away without trying to work things out. Andes kidnaps Ray and Lou and sets out to exact retribution. However, at the last moment, the man becomes ill and the criminals flee. Andes shoots and hits Lou. Ray manages to escape. Susan recalls getting rid of Edward's baby. The heroine cried in Hutton's car, saying that she would regret that mistake for the rest of her life. Suddenly, through the window, Susan sees Edward standing in the rain. In the novel, Tony loses his temper and cries, believing that he could have protected his wife and child but could not. Andes tries to comfort him. Tony goes in search of Ray and guesses that he hid in the very house where everything happened. There, the guy finally confesses to all his crimes. Unnoticed, Ray arms himself with an iron crowbar. He calls Tony a weakling and takes 2 bullets for it. The man sees Ray's hand fly into his face with the iron crowbar. Tony regains consciousness, but sees nothing. As he walks outside, he falls right on top of his weapon and loses his life. Susan finishes reading the book and tries to come to her senses. Soon the heroine receives a message from Edward with a request to set a place and time for a meeting. Susan carefully prepares for the meeting and removes her wedding ring. The heroine waits at the table for a long time. It becomes clear that Edward had no plans to come. Having given away the novel and made the appointment, he wanted Susan to finally experience the same pain as he did. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.